most recently also went back and fought in the war against Hamas after October 7th. So I have experience with that. I know it's a super politically contentious subject right now. I'm not trying to get into history. I have no intention of getting into that at all, but it's more, whatever I say is more just experiential from what I've seen on the ground, if it even gets to that. For me, I'm very personally connected to the hostages and to everything that happened on October 7th. So a lot of my race that we'll get into was for them and for the hostages and had them at heart. I have all the love and respect for Palestinians. Anyone listening, full respect, full love for them, and what I say is more my own, personal upbringing's take and my own personal experience, but no harm or foul or anything against what's happening and what's going on. So it was a 251-mile race in the Moab desert. It took me about 4.5 days. The official race is 240 miles. I added 11 for the hostages because there's 251 hostages that were taken on October 7th. So I wanted to dedicate a mile to every hostage. Find your why, find your purpose. It could be anything. Me running the 251 miles didn't free the hostages. I'm not like in some illusion that the whole year of training, I was going to finish this and the hostages would be free. It's like, obviously not. But it can give you this higher purpose. So no matter what you're doing in your life, you could be in finance, you could be in whatever, find that higher purpose, find some sort of connection, whether it's for your family, whether it's for whatever. If you're training for a marathon to, just be healthier, right? Who gives a shit about the marathon? Just to be healthier and to push yourself mentally, that's enough of a why. It could be to show your kid what is possible.
All right, Eli, we're live, brother. Welcome to the show.
Good. Thank you. Stoked for it.
Yeah, so before we get into who you are, what you do, and the amazing ways that you're pushing the boundaries of human performance for a very special cause, why don't we get started with a little disclaimer for the viewers?
Yeah.
Because obviously, I try to keep this podcast as scientific and unbiased as possible, but I think what you're doing is representative of, pushing the boundaries of human performance. And we have, I guess you could say, a bias in common, which is our religious beliefs and values and upbringing. And that's just, what we were born into. And so before we get canceled, why don't you give us a little disclaimer before we dive in?
Sure. Yeah. So small disclaimer. I am an Israeli IDF soldier in Special Forces unit. My team specialized in fighting Hezbollah up in the north of Israel, a lot of covert operations, specialty missions. I was a commander and spent 3.5 years there. And then most recently also went back and fought in the war against Hamas after October 7th. So I have experience with that. I know it's a super politically contentious subject right now. So my take on it is really just, I'm not trying to get into history. I have no intention of getting into that at all. But it's more, whatever I say is more just experiential from what I've seen on the ground, if it even gets to that. And, for me, I'm very personally connected to the hostages and to everything that happened on October 7th, because I have friends that are victims. So a lot of my race that we'll get into was for them and for the hostages and had them at heart. I have all the love and respect for Palestinians. Anyone listening, full respect, full love for them. And what I say is more my own, personal upbringing's take and my own personal experience, but no harm or foul or anything against what's happening and what's going on.
Thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself. Wonderfully said. And again, thank you for your bravery and for your mission and everything that you're doing to raise awareness for a cause that we believe in and that many of our listeners believe in.
That was one of the reasons I did it for the hostages as well, was because I tried to make it as politically not leaning for either side, right? If you're going and raising money for the IDF or FIDF or whatever it may be, then it becomes you're raising money for a military and for the war and for all this. But when it's for the hostages, I don't think anyone on either side wants the hostages in the terrorist hands. So for me, it was as neutral as it could possibly be.
Thank you for helping us acknowledge that nuance. That is very important.
Yeah.
So, you're actually the third IDF soldier on my podcast. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, wow.
They say good things come in threes, but I'm sure I'm going to have many more on the show.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, we had Ariel Nurieli, one of my closest friends, and Barack Harrison, who's another great friend of mine.
Barack's great. Barack.
Yeah. Oh, you know Barack? That's right.
He was in Iglos as well, actually. Same unit.
Oh, no way. Same unit?
Same unit, yeah.
Get out of here.
Yep, it's crazy because it's a very, very small unit.
Oh, wow.
At any given moment, there's maybe 150 to 200 active duty soldiers in the unit. And there's tens of thousands of people in the Israeli military.
Wow.
Maybe in total we have like 5,000 alum out of hundreds of thousands of millions of Israeli soldiers.
Wow, what a small world. I had no idea. Are you able to reveal the name of the unit and typically what the kind of operations look like?
Yeah, the unit's called Sayeret Egoz, so Egoz unit. We were originally part of the brigade, the Golani Brigade, which is a very big infantry unit, and we were their highest special forces unit. A few years ago, I want to say maybe 5 to 8 years ago, they took us, in addition to Maglan, which was the similar level of us, but for the Tzanchanim, the paratroopers unit, and then a unit called Duvdevan, which is, if anyone's seen Fauda, the writers of Fauda based the show off of this unit called Duvdevan. So they took the three of our units and put us into one brigade called the Commando Brigade. So it's the IDF Special Forces reconnaissance guerrilla warfare unit. Each unit within this brigade has its own specialty. So Maglan has all sorts of special missiles and stuff like that. Duvdevan specializes in the West Bank. And then Egoz specializes in reconnaissance and guerrilla warfare against Hezbollah. So if you've ever seen Lone Survivor, it's does similar things to that. Over the last couple of years, they've molded a lot of the three units to be a little bit more similar. But yeah, it's basically Israel's elite commando brigade. They have different units like Shayetet Shoshesre, which is like the Israeli Navy SEAL, Sayeret Matkal, those are higher up than us.
Shayetet 13.
Shayetet 13. So in terms of like the big mass force of an army that you could send in, commando is going to be their special forces for that. That's that. So, both, the unit, the brigade, the commando, it goes, everything did a lot of work, both in the Gaza war, in the current Lebanon war, and then in previous wars as well.
Yeah, I have, so I did Birthright Israel when I was in college, and you know how you get assigned a few soldiers to each group, and they help you, assimilate to the culture and just kind of get engaged. And the soldier that was assigned to us, I'm not going to reveal his name, but he was a member of Shayetet 13, and back then I had no idea, what that even meant. But when I learned what it was, I was really, I guess in the moment I was surprised, now not so much. I was surprised and impressed by how humble this guy was. And ultimately they're like SEAL Team 6 equivalent, right?
They're
like
super bad. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just so, I'm so impressed by how challenging something like that is, what you guys do, and the strength in being able to just stay so focused and so secretive, but just really honoring what the mission is all about. It's not about how badass you guys are and how strong you are and showing off and being pretentious or arrogant, these commandos, right? But you guys really have this inner strength that is so impressive, and you guys are so humble. I wanted to ask you if you could speak on behalf of that kind of behavior and mindset, and why it's so important to have that kind of mindset as a leader, as a commander, as a member of a tight-knit community, as warriors.
Yeah. I would say like a big aspect of it is really, there's a few things I would say. One is, while the stuff like Hollywoodized is very cool, sexy, badass, all that, at the end of the day, when you see it and you do it over and over and over again, it becomes normal, but also you just realize it's important to do. It's not this crazy, gung-ho mission thing. It's also not nearly as crazy as what the Hollywood missions are showing it to be like. So it becomes, you're like, oh, I didn't do, well, if you think of the bigger mission, you're like, whoa, I did this whole crazy thing. But if you really bring it down to your particular role, it may sound very minute and boring and not that interesting. So that's one aspect of it. But it's super important to just realize the importance of the mission and what you're going after, and to have that humbleness. Because I remember when we were going through training, our officer, we'd finished these big physical feats, and we'd be, by the end.
Can you give us an example?
Like, it'll be it was like a 50-kilometer march. It's about a 30-mile march. We had, I think it was 70% body weight. So I weighed 200 pounds at the time. So that's, what is it? That's about 140 additional pounds on me. So I'm weighing a full 340. And we're going through the sand, soft sand, for 50 kilometers with all this weight. And in the last, I think it was 10 kilometers, they open up the stretchers and they put 200 pounds of sandbags on the stretchers, and you're taking shifts with your friends. There's like probably 8 people per stretcher, and you're shifting, or 6 people per stretcher, and I think it was 6, and you're taking turns. So now you've got an additional, 50 pounds per person that each person's putting on their shoulders.
400 pounds you're carrying through the desert.
400 pounds you're carrying through the desert, or on the beach, on the soft sand of the beach, miserable. You've been up the whole night. It's just painful. It's just pure pain. And you're doing it to train for these much higher, bigger missions where you have to be quiet. You have to be secretive. You have to do all this because it's your life. You can't be, it's your life. It's your friend's life. It's the success of the mission. And you'd see, I remember seeing all these like Marine things where you hear them chanting and you hear them doing all that stuff, and you hear people like rallying each other and being loud and, yeah, let's go, man. And we tried doing that, I think it was like the first or second time, and our officer just looked back at us and was like, and the whole thing was just dead silent, and it's all in your head.
It's all about that intrinsic drive, that intrinsic motivation. It's not about
in your head. You can look at each other,
or pre-workout, or yelling to your buddy, or giving a fist bump. It's like, we're here to accomplish a mission. We have to stay focused. You can look at each other. You've got the look. Like, you can see when someone's hurting. You look at him. You can give him the look. You can give him a little tap or something like that. But everything's dead silent. And that came into training. Like, the training that came into the mission. If we were going to be yelling and chanting and this and that in the hard times there, you would do it in the hard times in the mission. So your training is very symbolic of how you're actually going to act. And that was a big thing. It's just being quiet, being humble, being focused on the mission. And that's what was important. And it carries with everything. You'll see people getting into their own head about all these big, huge, crazy accomplishments. Whoa, yeah, bro, we did it. Just like, stay focused, stay steady. You do it. Next step, next step, next step, next step. That's all it is. Got the job done? Great. So that humble attitude. Yeah, so this humble and focused attitude that you can appreciate about folks like yourself, it's because that's simply the way that you train, and the training is something that reinforces your human behavior on such a deep level. You're gonna live your life every single day under those constructs, that framework, right?
100%.
And so it's not about bragging about this or that, because when you're in a mission, you're focused, you're quiet, and there's a much bigger thing that you're accomplishing. It's not about the little fist bump or the conversation you're hyping. It's just focus on what's important.
It's 100% focus and seeing the bigger picture. It's all that.
And there's really something fascinating to me about how this works from a neuroscientific, psychological perspective. When you look at things like dopamine and extrinsic motivation. What I mean by extrinsic is, a lot of people, how many people do you know that need to have a special song on when they go and work out? When they're going to go hit an intense set, they need a pre-workout. They need to have their gym buddy there with them, right? They need things other than themselves to accomplish something difficult. But ultimately, they're taking away from the mental callus and focus they need to build internally, that intrinsic drive to do difficult things. And I think that, if we look back at how you guys train, like if anyone tuning into this applies more of that to their day-to-day and doing the important things they need to do to become incredible, then it's going to be ingrained in them in a way that they know they can depend on themselves, and they know that their team can depend on them because they can take care of themselves and be so focused independently. And it 100%. Really just goes down to these neural networks that you can hone in on and train,
100%. And I mean, don't get me wrong. There's that, like, I don't take pre-workout, but I pre-workout also scientifically as, it's like jacked up with caffeine. So people are like going to get an actual physical benefit. There's definitely a huge degree of placebo to it because they'll take the pre-workout and like 10 minutes later, they're ready to go. It's like, doesn't hit that quickly.
Yeah, caffeine takes a little longer to kick in.
Yeah. But in general, like I do, there is that, and people will have a better workout. But I couldn't agree more in the sense that they've become over dependent on it. And really the power of the mind is so much more powerful than people think. We become
more powerful than pre-workout than C4, Red Bull, and all that.
Oh my God, the power of the mind is like, I mean, in my race just now, I mean, I tried to strain myself or like wean myself off of coffee and caffeine for about 3 weeks before the race even started, just because I knew that I wanted that punch. Like I didn't, so it was a 4.5 day race. We haven't talked about it yet
but no one knows how many miles.
Yeah, so
I think when they acknowledge this, they're gonna freak out.
Yeah,
it's insane. It is really incredible. Something you can't accomplish if you were dependent on caffeine or any other stimulant. It was all internal.
I mean, at one point, none of it works. But it was a 251-mile race in the Moab desert. It took me about 4.5 days. The official race is 240 miles. I added 11 for the hostages because there's 251 hostages that were taken on October 7th. So I wanted to dedicate a mile to every hostage. Total elevation gain over the course of the race is about 30,000 feet, which is around, like, total, if you're putting it together, is around the height of Mount Everest. Obviously you don't get to that elevation, but in terms of feet climbed, it's almost the height of Mount Everest.
Wow.
Average altitude that you're at is in the 6,000 to 8,000 range. Getting up to about 10,500 feet. So it's like full, and they give you 117 hours, which is just under 5 days to complete it. Took me about 4.5 days. Over the course of the 4.5 days, I slept about 4.5 hours. That comprised of a 1 hour sleep at night on a cot, and then about 15-minute just dirt nap is what they call it, like on the side of the road. And like literally on the dirt, like on the trail, I just posted on my Instagram and just went into the bush into like...
Yeah, you were covered in like a trash bag, like a black trash bag or something.
That was another one. That was a nighttime one, yeah. So the day ones, I would just go behind go under a tree so I'd have some shade, put my hat on or have my sunglasses on, cover my face, set my phone alarm for 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it was, have my pacer wake me up also, and you just pass out like a light because you're so tired, and then you wake up and you just keep going. The trash bag one was freezing cold at night, so when you can't just sleep at night, you're going to freeze. You could actually it could be dangerous. So we had these emergency bivy bags, so they're kind of like those metal, those marathon blankets, but imagine a sleeping bag version of it. So you get inside that and it's super toasty inside. Like you'd be surprised how well these things work. And you just pass out for 10, 15, 20 minutes, wake up and you keep going. But yeah, so it was about 4.5 hours of sleep. I don't recommend that to anybody. Yeah. Definitely not good for the human body or strength or anything, injury prevention, anything. Definitely not good. But, not good in terms of physical health. But I think the benefits you gain from these types of experiences, whether it's a 200-mile race, a marathon, a triathlon, an Ironman, crazy swim, whatever it might be for each individual, it has to be pushing those boundaries. It has to, when you sign up for it, when you think about it, you should feel scared to do it. And you should doubt yourself. And other people should be like, whoa, what? Because that is going to put your mind to a level that and it's going to push your body and it's going to push your mind to go through pain to a level that you've never experienced before. And that level will continuously climb. So I always say some of the hardest things weren't necessarily harder than things I'm currently doing. But for that time in my life, it was a bigger jump that I actually have to push myself more than I've had to in some of the things I do now. So now if I go do a 50 miler, it's not that hard. But at the time, my first marathon, or my first half marathon, even when I was 13 years old, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. So pushing my mind through that and telling my body that no matter how much pain I was in or discomfort, and there's a huge difference between pain and discomfort, which I'll get to, but no matter how much pain or discomfort I was in, I can push through it, and the human body and human mind can push through that. That is incredibly healthy. That is incredibly healthy. So sometimes I'd say it's worth the physical sacrifices that may, the 4 hours of sleep isn't healthy, all these different things, but the mental boost you get from those events and activities, are life-changing.
So, I want to fill the listeners in on something. Most people know who David Goggins is. And David Goggins has done the Moab. I believe the first time he did it, and correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't complete it.
Yeah.
It's David Goggins, right?
David Goggins.
But so David Goggins actually did a podcast somewhat recently with Andrew Huberman, and they spoke about what you just mentioned. They spoke about the psychological and they looked at it from a neuroscience perspective, and I want to describe this because I think it's just so valuable for anybody. What you just said is so fucking valuable. If anyone tuning in wants to do something incredible in their life, they have to understand how this mechanism works, and it's eliciting neuroplasticity on a region of the brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex. We have two of them, one on each side of the brain, and it grows in response to doing difficult things. And if you actually look at the anterior midcingulate cortexes of the most accomplished individuals, whether they are executives or athletes, the most accomplished human beings on the planet in the history of the world have the largest anterior midcingulate cortexes because they've elicited that neuroplasticity by doing things that are relatively very challenging for them. So I'll give you an example of something that wouldn't work. It's like everyone knows, cold plunge, an ice bath, like that's really difficult. But if you make a habit of going in the ice plunge for a couple of minutes at a time, and then it starts to feel a little easier for you, it gets to the point where you're no longer eliciting neuroplasticity. In fact, if it gets too easy, you might even see an atrophy or a shrinking in this center. So if you want to have that mental callus, so you can go harder and harder and harder and do more incredible things like you just said, you have to push that boundary. Otherwise, it's going to be more difficult to do the meaningful things you need to do to really accomplish something amazing, because 100%. You're going to stunt the growth of this region in the brain.
100%. Like 100%. I remember hearing I've heard that on some, maybe it was Peter T. or Huberman. I don't think I heard the Goggins Huberman one, but I think I heard Huberman talk about it with someone else, exactly what you said, which I found super fascinating, that it's now scientifically proven. It's one of those bro science things that we're we know it, but now it's in the data. But I couldn't agree more. For me personally, this 250 mile race was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life, without a doubt. I pushed myself to degrees. I just found out that I partially tore my hamstring at some point. My knee started hurting at mile 50. I kept pushing it. I've had these knee pains before. I've done a 100 miler with knee pain at mile 50, so it's an extra 50 miles, which was really hard at the time. This is an extra 200 miles on this knee pain. At some point, that knee pain turned into all sorts of other pains, and it was brutal. My brother Adam, who you know.
Yeah. Shout out to Adam. I just worked out with him. I just got to work out with him at anatomy.
I know. I talked to him. He was like, "What? Andres didn't tell me you're going to hop on the podcast."
I thought I did. Oh wow, yeah.
No, that's funny. But he's definitely going to listen to this. So shout out to Adam. But so you can ask him. I was in so much pain. He was whipping every card out in the book for the last 40 miles to help me.
Yeah, he helped you with those last 40, huh?
Oh, big time.
What was it like to have your brother there? Are you older or younger?
I'm older, but it was huge. I mean, me and him push each other all the time, but we also support each other a lot.
Yeah.
So we both got into ultramarathons. He got into it before me, but we both got into it from Goggins. And we have this fun, like, silent competition, but also, like, huge support at the same time. So we did the Leadville race together last year, which I don't know if he told you about how he surprised me in that one.
Yeah.
I'd signed up for it, didn't know he was also signed up, and he surprised me on the start line that he was doing it as well.
Wow.
Which was super cool. Yeah. It was the short story, and then we ended up racing together, which was super fun. And then for this one, I mean, when I knew I was doing this one, he was my first text. I was like, do you want to take me to the finish line? There's no one I'd rather have who can both get in my head, because
he knows you better than anybody else.
He knows me better. He also knows the sport better. So than the average pacer. So he knows what each section's going to be like. He knows what to look out for. He knows what to say, when to use encouragement, when to just like push me. Yeah, like all that kind of stuff. So he was amazing. Shout out to all my crew if they're going to listen, and all my pacers. I literally would not have finished without them. It's so invaluable. But yeah, I mean, going back to the paintings, it was the most difficult thing I've ever done. These 250 miles.
251.
You aren't. And constantly pushing through it was was literally a sufferfest. And what Courtney DeWalter, was a super famous ultramarathon runner, talks about the pain cave is just like getting in there, and you're just in this cave, and it's just full of pain. And she used to talk about how early it would be, and she'd try to avoid getting into the pain cave. Now she's like welcomes the pain cave, and she's like, oh, this is the pain. This is me. This is my pain cave. Let's expand it. Let's renovate here. Like, let me get used to and get comfortable being in this home, because it's a place where you can now grow. And for me, I mean, this was days in the pain cave, but I wouldn't have been able to do that. And it goes to David Goggins' cookie jar thing that he's talked about a bunch. If I hadn't done all these other things prior, my military experience, we've gone through training that, like I said with my officer, he would push us and make sure that we're silent and we're not being these, hoorah kind of mindset people. Just be silent, be focused on the mission, stay in your head and complete it. My Ironman, my 50 milers, my 100 miles, all those little things brought me to being able to do this. And it was that neuroplasticity that was constantly growing over time. And it's also the discipline. I mean, training for something like this, being in good physical shape, period, no matter what it is, whether you're expert in yoga, big bodybuilder, whether you have the best, mobility, whatever it may be, it requires constant discipline. We're looking at your sleep, looking at your nutrition, looking at your consistent daily practice. And that's sometimes more painful than all the other stuff. It's resisting all the micro things in life that are going to bring you to it and want you to cheat and want you to do all these different things. It's the constant discipline, and it keeps you on track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's I want to amplify some of this by tying in a few concepts coined by Dr. Kelly McGonigal. She's a Stanford psychologist, and she did a TED Talk that, to this day, I don't know if it's number one most downloaded TED Talk of all time, but it's up there. It's called Making Stress Your Friend. She's very well known for that. Basically, she talks about, how the most dangerous thing about stress is your negative perception of it, and how it helps you build a biology of courage. But more importantly, as far as what I want to get into with you here is, she authored a book called The Joy of Movement that is just an incredible book. It's so rich because it digs into these evolutionarily preserved mechanisms, like things that are within us that have been a part of our human experience forever, that we can tap into when we exercise among other people. So, for example, when we do exercise in a group or with our sibling or a teammate or someone in our unit, or even strangers, we tap into an expanded sense of self, which you touched on, and we quite literally experience an endorphin response, these feel-good hormones that help us go harder in the moment. And after the exercise, they help to limit the amount of damage that has been done. They are cardioprotective, and they help our brain. So basically, when you're among other people doing difficult things, not only can you go harder because you have this endorphins and you feel like they have your back and you have their back, and there's this oxytocin, that cuddle hormone that kicks in, but it also helps you reinforce that difficult effort. There's more positive reinforcement, and you just get stronger and stronger over time. And there's a few quotes that I wrote down when I read her book that I want to share with you that I would love for us to sort of, us and the listeners, to kind of simmer on, because they really are just wonderful. So if you don't mind, I'll just read off some of these quotes. So something she talks about, and you're an expert in this, she talks about the runner's high, and then there's this other thing called the helper's high. We get high when we help other people, right? And so she goes, when you bring together the runner's high and the helper's high, the rewards go beyond a more satisfying workout. She then goes on to describe a 2017 review of how the endocannabinoid system works in the brain, and she mentions how scientists identified 3 things that reliably amp it up, and they are cannabis intoxication, which most people could have guessed when they heard endocannabinoid, exercise, and social connection. Like, think about it. Most people here, well, maybe a good proportion, have at some point in time consumed marijuana. Well, you get a similar high when you're among other people, when you combine the runner's high and the helper's high.
Wow.
And she talks about how, we evolved as social creatures. We need one another to survive. Throughout human history, movement, whether labor, ritual, or play, has helped us to connect, collaborate, and celebrate. And today, physical activity continues to draw us together and reminds us how much we need one another. This was something of a revelation, how much the individual psychology benefits of physical activity rely on our social nature, and how so much of the joy of movement is actually the joy of connection. So, that connection that you have with your brother, I think, is just so meaningful. And I hope that it inspires folks that are tuning in that want to do difficult things to remember and to appreciate that, on our own, we can go faster, but with each other, we can go further. And you guys have certainly proved that.
Proved that one, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think by mile 211, when he picked me up, he could have gone much faster than I could have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the self-transcendence, when you guys came together. There's a French sociologist, his name is Emile Durkheim, I believe is how you pronounce his name.
Okay.
He coined the term collective effervescence to describe that euphoric, self-transcendence that we feel when we move together in ritual and prayer or work.
Totally.
And yeah, man. I mean, there's many quotes that I can read off here, and
I love that
share,
TED Talk that you were talking about with what was her name?
Yeah, Kelly McGonigal. So she's the author of the book. These are the quotes that I'm reading from her book. But yeah, I
love that combo of runner's high and helper's high. I'd never heard of helper's high, but and the second you said it, I was like, oh, 100%, I get that.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, those combine two of the things I love the most is, the runner's high, obviously, I understand and just have connected with. A lot of people say that they never reached that runner's high and they don't get it. And there's all sorts of coaching things I could suggest them to actually get there. One of which is they're probably running too fast and they're just trying to do this high school or middle school speed and they're not even close to that. So I'm just just slow down a lot. And you'll eventually just get into this runner's high. And, it's not going to happen the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth time maybe. But eventually you'll just get in the habit and you'll start kind of clocking out and checking out. And it's a great feeling. But then the helper's high as well. People are addicted to helping each other. Once you help one person, you're going to want to help someone else. And you feel this benefit. It's almost a selfish thing to help other people because some people, they may not even be doing it for the help. Sometimes they're doing it without realizing that because they know that they're going to feel good about it. And when you combine the runner's high and the helper's high, which is, I felt like is exactly what I did on this race, is I was deep into the runner's high for a long time. and I was doing it for the hostages to help. It was this like combined whoa feeling for me.
Isn't it?
And I mean, I think that's why you see run clubs are huge. People love getting together in social groups and running together. It's a super easy way to like meet people. And now it's basically a dating app.
It's the best dating. It's the best way to date in 2024.
And then, I mean, you'll see like there's the coffee and chill in LA and Miami and Bondi Beach. And
shout out to Eric Brown in Miami who hosts that incredible experience.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So there's, there's that. It's people just getting together, suffering in a cold plunge. Like that's pretty much what it is. And then just hanging out afterwards. All these activities are people getting together in some sort of social movement to better themselves and also to reach these healthier points in their brain. And then you have all these different races, 5Ks, 10Ks, that are always for different types of, there's during Cancer Month, they're going to have a 10K or a marathon, and all of them are for causes. People love it. They've been going around for decades now, and we need to keep them going, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to quote Kelly directly here one more time and say, when physical activity is the most psychologically fulfilling, it's because our participation both reveals the good in us and lets us witness the good in others. And the feeling of boundaries dissolving, which is relevant to dating when you're at the run club, but also to go harder and to go further. The feeling of boundaries dissolving is one of the most powerful aspects of collective joy. It's not the idea of being connected. It is a physical sensation of connection. And as she quotes Bronwyn Tarr, he goes, the essence of collective joy is an expanded sense of self. So imagine how much further you can go in any dimension or any realm of your life, of this human experience, if you choose to do difficult things and suffer with other people. The boundaries are limitless. So.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what's also nice about being in any type of race like that, whether it's a running race, an Ironman, you're seeing other people suffer with you. And like one of the things that for me while I'm racing, I'll be in a section and I'm in tons of pain and it's super difficult. Maybe I'm on a high during it, but I know that for the most part, everyone else in that race, in that section, is probably suffering as well to different degrees, right? Like at one point I had a torn hamstring, but everyone's miserable at this point in the race. No one's 200 miles into a race being like, oh, this is fun and easy. No one's doing their first marathon at mile 20 and being like, oh, this is easy, when they've, really hit the wall for the first time. Everyone else around you that's doing it for the first time, second time, third time, like they're also suffering. And that collective suffering pushes you forward. You look left and right. You're seeing everyone kind of in that pain cave. And it's unifying. For me, I also love doing it, being like, I'm not going to let this person be better than me. Like, they're suffering, I can suffer too.
It's a little bit of healthy competition. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, everyone's hurting right now.
You, and they go a little harder. Then you notice them, then you go a little harder.
Exactly. You get into that back and forth, and it's fun in a race. Like even in this race now, you're ping-ponging people, leapfrogging each other. You pass them, then you have a weak point and you're slowing down a bit, and they pass you, and the same thing happens to them. And you have this fun little friendly rivalry that is going to keep going until somebody finishes first. But it's all part of the fun competition, and 99% of the people in these races, unless you're in the top 10 people, everyone's trying to just race themselves.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're just racing themselves, and you're supporting each other through it. If someone's clearly hurting on the side of the road, you're going to ask each other, you're going to ask them if they need help. And that's one of the beautiful parts about these races, is that everyone's battling themselves with a slight battle against just friendly competition, but everyone's also pushing each other through because everyone wants to see each other succeed. And it's just super fun.
And this is a massive race. I mean, in the sense that it's just so so daunting, to say the least. I mean, how many people were signed up for it? How many people were around you?
Yeah, so there's 250 participants in the race. There were 128 finishers, so just over 50% completed the race. And I was doing a little bit of math this last week or two, and it was kind of cool to think that, I mean, there's about 2,000 to 3,000 people tops in history. Take out, hunter-gatherers and going into deep anthropology, or the one-off through hikers that are doing these crazy 400-mile feats in a few days. Like, with them being the exceptions, there's no more than 2,000 to 3,000 people in modern history, let's call it, that have run this distance. So everyone that you're looking around you is crazy for signing up for it. Like, just being on the start line is going to take a ton of training. I mean, there's 60-year-olds that were doing this race. And it requires this certain mentality just to get into it. And yeah, I mean, it was 250 miles. I still am daunted when I'm thinking back at it, the more I think back at it.
To put into perspective, again, just to amplify this point and show the listeners who, I mean, I think at this point we've already driven the point home in a lot of ways how difficult this is. But there's some studies that show that over 95% of people over 30 years old will never sprint again, right? And I would...
Really?
Yeah, it's something incredible. This was published in... Let's see. Let me look it up. I want to make sure I do the research justice here.
Well, sprinting is so important.
Yeah, let me see if I can find the source. But
it's fascinating.
So I mean, most people will never. I would assume that most people never get to run a combined total of 251 miles ever in the course of their lifetime, right? Mm-hmm. This metric alone is just, I think, very representative of how much we limit our human experience, because we live in such a, among other things, we live in such a convenient environment. We don't need to run or sprint to make ends meet anymore. We can just sit on our ass and work from home and make ends meet. Totally. However, we get to tap into an incredible plethora of these mechanisms that are ingrained in our DNA that help us feel better, perform higher, connect more deeply with people, and that's something that will benefit anyone, because something that we all have in common, right? So, I think more people need to acknowledge that while we don't need to run distances like these, we don't need to sprint, it's going to reward us in ways beyond what we can fathom currently, because literally our brain grows. We elicit neuroplasticity. Totally. We have new neural networks that are coming about and rewarding us outside of the race for the rest of our lives.
Totally.
If we just decide, you know what, I'm going to do something difficult today.
Totally. And it could be anything. Like I said, obviously no one needs to run that distance. I don't recommend most people running that distance. But
whatever distance you feel uncomfortable with, that's the distance.
Whatever distance you go. Like, for some people, it could literally be getting up and running for 10 minutes that day.
Yeah. That's
going to slowly grow. And even now, like, for me, I have no interest in doing that distance again. And I'm shifting my own focus, because for me personally, it was like, okay, well, I've reached a certain ceiling. Obviously, I can explore the ceiling and do this 200-mile race and that 100-something mile race and do this, compete for that time. And there's a whole world once you get into the black hole of that you can explore. But to a certain degree, I've reached a ceiling in this world. Let's explore other ceilings. So for me now, like, pushing to a new level in running is going to cause so much strain on my body, but also, like, you need to do so much just to gain an extra 1, 2, 3%.
There's like diminishing returns.
Yeah. But like, if I switch now and I'm like, let me get back into yoga. I'm also yoga certified. Let me get back into yoga. Let me, get into swimming. Like, for me right now, doing a 2-mile swim would be insane, but it's also
try free diving.
Yeah, funny story about that. I actually tried to get my freestyle diving certification with Adam in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Can't do the Valsalvo, whatever it is, technique.
Really? Equalize your head. Really?
Yeah, failed miserably. Adam was cracking up. He had a great time, knowing that he crushed it, and I was like, I would go like 5 to 10 meters down.
He won up you there on that one, but like you said, you guys go back. He won up, maybe he won up you there on that one, but you guys go back and forth.
Head up to me on that one.
Yeah,
he crushed me.
Yeah, fair enough.
But no, I definitely want to go back and try it again. It looks super fun. I've seen a bunch of your videos. I want to be able to do it and go spearfishing, and it's just like, it's so in tune with so much of what I love to do.
Yeah.
But that's a perfect example. Is that like me getting to even a moderate level of free diving, would take less time, be way less strain on my body, all that, but it would have so much more returns personally.
Yeah.
So it's like exploring and pushing your own boundaries. Like within the physical realm, people always say, is this the best shape you've ever been in your life? Well, it depends what.
Yeah.
If you ask me to carry 90% body weight right now, there's no way I could do it.
Yeah.
But I was able to do that in the Army.
Right.
If you asked me to bench press 250 pounds, there's no way I could do it, but I was able to do it in college. If you asked me to run an Ironman, I couldn't bike or swim that distance, but I was able to do it at the end of college. Right. So it's all relative. Right now, ask me to dive for 2 minutes at 20 meters, literally no chance.
Yeah.
You could probably, I mean, I don't know what the parameters are here, but you could probably do that easy. And that's like a normal day for you. Like getting to that would be so much more fun. Right. And for every single person, they just need to know that they don't have to run 250 miles. They don't even have to run a marathon for all I care. Find whatever's important and fun for you. Like the most important is just getting outside and being physically active and pushing your mindset, challenging yourself physically and mentally. It could literally be anything.
Right.
And that activity alone is not only going to grow the neuroplasticity, but it's going to be fun and it's going to challenge you and it's going to be healthy for you. And that's like the biggest recommendation I have. And once you become an expert in one, if you want, change it up. No one's forcing, like, I have this identity now as a runner and people are like, oh, Eli, what's your next race? I'm like, well, I don't think I'm going to run for, like competitively run for a while now. I'm just going to switch it up and find something new and fun and kind of reinvest a fuck ton of money into other sports that now it's going to drain my bank account, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I can empathize with the expensive hobbies myself, but hey, I mean, it really is about, doing something unique. When you do any of these niche activities, it's going to require an investment because it's relatively inaccessible for a reason. You have to go out of your way to make it happen.
Totally. But again, like, and I'm not trying to like gear people, like get people to shy away because of the expense. Also, the focus here is just doing something and getting outside and doing something physically active that you enjoy. Like that, like bare minimum. Let's start
enjoy
at that.
But challenge yourself.
Exactly. And usually they're going to come hand in hand. Yeah. Like it'll be like, have it be something you're good at, right? And running comes naturally to me and I enjoy it. But like continuously running more makes it more challenging. There are other things, for example, free diving does not come naturally to me at all. But I'm going to now challenge it because it's going to be fun and it's going to push me, even though I suck at it right now. Yeah. But the more repetitions you do, the more you practice, I guarantee the first time I do a 10-meter dive, I'm going to be fucking stoked. I'm going to come out of that water with the same smile, if not bigger, than when I was like running my first marathon or 50-miler. Yep. Because it's going to be a huge accomplishment for me, even though it's the tiniest, easiest thing for someone else. Right. But like if someone doesn't like that and they just want to go out for a walk, instead of your hour-long walk, make it an hour and a half. Yep. Push yourself that little bit amount. Instead of doing one Barry's boot camp class, challenge yourself and do 2 in a row. Or like, little things like that, just to push yourself is going to be a world of a difference. Right. And to tie this back into physiology, in physiology, the way that we would describe this is, first of all, the very specific nature of the stimulus warrants the specific nature of the adaptation. So going back to what you were saying, how maybe you're fit for this, but you're not fit for that right now, but you're still fit. It's like, well, yeah, according to the kind of activity that you're doing, this is what you're fit for now. Yes, generally you're a super fit guy, mentally and physically, but if you train so specifically for something, that's where you're going to be best fit for, and then you can push it up. But regardless, there has to be a hormetic response
So hormesis or use stress, like a positive form of stress, it's enough stress to warrant an adaptive response in the body. So when you go in the gym, most people, the simplest example that I can give here is you go to the gym, right? The idea is you go to the gym, you lift heavy weight, you apply resistance, and your muscle suffers. Like, it hurts, it swells up. But that is what stimulates growth. Assuming you have, adequate recovery, sleep, nutrition, time off, your muscle will grow. Obviously, there's such thing as overdoing it, and there's such thing as underdoing it. But that sweet spot is going to feel uncomfortable. Now, the next level up that most people are not fully familiar with, but I think I want to emphasize, and you'll appreciate this too, is like breath work. Like I tell a lot of people,
100%.
I tell a lot of people, like, you want to hold your breath longer, like for free diving or just to, increase your VO2 max. Like all these mechanisms are very tied together in a sense. So
Totally.
A lot of people, I tell them, hey, look, next time you go to the gym, just try to nasal breathe as much as possible. And it's not going to be easy because while it is a more efficient way to breathe, it's slower. And you will feel this urge to breathe because CO2, carbon dioxide, which is acidic, it'll build up in your blood, and your brain is going to say, hey, man, breathe more quickly. And you're going to shift into mouth breathing. And that's going to keep you from being able to recover more quickly between sets, even though it's counterintuitive because, when you nasal breathe, you engage more of the diaphragm, more of the vagus nerve for parasympathetic activity. You get to filter the air better, humidify the air better. You see an increase in nitric oxide, lowers your blood pressure, has an antibacterial, antimicrobial, antifungal effect in the nose and the sinuses, all these benefits. But just like when you go and you lift weight and you feel that strain in the muscle, when you're nasal breathing while you train, that relative discomfort is the reason why the anatomy and physiology of your breath will improve over time, right? And it goes, like you were saying, like this applies to any difficult thing. So it's a matter of, if you want to keep your brain spicy and promoting neurogenesis, just apply the mentality that you have to anything that you do.
100%.
And do the things that make you frustrated. And last thing I want to say here before I switch this back onto you, because I want to dig into a lot of topics beyond the race. Last thing I want to say is I probably need to start running. And how about this? I'll make you a deal. Because it's what I dislike the most. Okay, that's so just appreciating this theme that we're discussing here. I'll tell you what, I'm more than happy to give you all the advice and help that you could ever want or need for freediving. And in exchange, all I ask is that you help me run a few more miles.
Easy.
I'm great at sprinting, but I hate running distance, which is exactly why I have to do it.
100%. Tell me what your goal is. I'm happy to help you out.
I want to run a 100-mile race. Definitely.
I thought you were going to say
marathon.
That
scares the shit out of me to say that, which is exactly why I have to do it.
That's the feeling that you need. That's the feeling that you need.
This is the first time that I've vocalized this, by the way. I've never said this to anyone before, but you've inspired me. Yeah.
Dude, it's so funny because Adam would always tell me, like, I can't run too much. Andre says I can't run.
Well, because
I can't do the ultramarathons anymore. They're not good for me. I'm like, right, they're not good for us.
Well, so Adam...
It's the mentality. Yeah. Me and Adam we've both overdone it. Like, what you're about to... I'm guessing what you're about to say is so spot on. It's like, you don't have to do this as your main form of activity forever. But it's breaking that fear in your head and getting over that huge discomfort. Then you go back to whatever you're doing afterwards. But that year or two that it's going to take just to get there, it's going to be massive and it's going to be life-changing. Yeah. Just like for me, I've hit a plateau here. Let's switch it up. Yeah. Free diving 100%, dude. I'm stoked to go spearfishing with you once I'm done with this certification.
Absolutely. Consider it done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, look,
I'm happy to help you. We can chat about it now or offline and give you as much advice as you need for
I love it, man.
I'm
Thank you so
hyped on
much.
that.
And Adam, so just to fill the audience in, Adam is someone that I met through your cousin, Nikita. Shout out to Nikita. DJ Nigiri, best DJ in Miami.
Shout out. No, now she's just Nikita Green.
Oh, okay, perfect. Nikita Green.
No more DJ Nigiri. No, just Nikita Green.
I love it. Adam, like you, I mean, you guys are so successful. And I think it does have a lot to do with the neurogenesis, neuroplasticity you've elicited on your anterior vestibular cortexes,
Totally.
And I took him under my wing. He was my client. Actually, he just graduated. We did 6 months together.
Hell yeah.
And he had very specific goals. He wanted to increase his VO2 max and put on more muscle. And Obviously, his
Yeah, he
VO2
looks
is very,
great.
very, very high. Yeah, dude, he's
Looks
looking
great.
absolutely amazing. The other day, we were working on anatomy, and I was like, dude, I mean, your face is more chiseled. Like, you got this handsome Squidward look. You got a six pack. You look amazing. And then
I told him
I
that
was like,
dude, you've been looking great.
yeah. And I was like, hey, man, how much do you weigh? And he's like, I think I weigh about this much. And I was like, I think we might weigh around the same. Dude, he gets on the scale. He's 169.2. I get on the scale, exactly the same weight to the decimal point. And I was like, dude,
That's
I was like,
wild.
wow, man, like this is awesome. But anyway, I wanted to mention that because, like you said, yes, there's diminishing returns. Yes, we do things for different reasons. There's different benefits. But, he switched it up. And I had him doing things that he had never done before that helped his body adapt in a different way. And it just goes back to, we were fit in different ways. But still, your mental fitness is like, is topped off. And you have to continue to maintain it by doing difficult things in other dimensions and in other areas. So, yeah, man, I want to start running because I hate it and I suck at it.
That's David Goggins,
it's
dude.
the way to go. It's the way to go. 100%.
David Goggins says, people think I love running. I fucking hate running. Like, I look at those shoes in front of the door and, like, I'll sit there for an hour making excuses to myself before I put it on. Yeah. And it's so true. It's so true. You just gotta do it. Dude, 100 miles, I'm hyped for you. It's big. I'll pace you. You gotta pace.
I'd love it. I'd love that. We're gonna look back on this podcast and we're gonna say we fucking did it. We're planting the seed now.
That's a big one.
I have a few questions for you about the more emotional side, behind this effort. If you can take me through, and by the way, something that we should have probably tackled earlier, just a small detail. How long ago did you do this race? I know the answer, but I want to show people just how recent this is. It's kind of nuts that you're on this podcast.
I did the race 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Today's my first day, not like on a cane actually, because I injured my legs and it tore my hamstring. I just found out. So I got the MRI results literally 5 minutes before our call. So I was like, told Dad, I'm going to text my family, but tore my hamstring. But it's no surgery needed, just need to do a bunch of PT.
BH.
Yeah, a lot of PT and aquatherapy and tart cherry juice and all the good stuff. But yeah, no, I finished it 2 weeks ago.
Can you take us through a timeline of like how you felt the days before the race, during the race, and how you felt the past 2 weeks? You can reflect back and tell us emotionally, maybe physically, how you felt.
Totally. I mean, I'll even take it a little bit further back too, because I've actually trained for this race for 2 years now.
Oh, wow.
And the reason it was 2 years is, I've been in ultramarathon running. So if you look at the big picture, it's probably been several years. But with this race in particular, it was 2 years because I spent the first year training for it. I was actually signed up for this race October 13th, 2023.
Wow.
And I did Leadville, finished Leadville, got a little bit injured, had rehabbed myself, and was ready to do it. And then October 7th hit, 2023. My military team got called into the Army. So I pulled out of the race, told them I'm not going to be racing, watched it on Instagram or whatever it is, was in war for 4.5 months, focused on that, came back from the war, and I was signed up for this race for this year, 2024. And mentally, I couldn't get into it. I was like, more from like, minor PTSD of the war. I was like, what's the point of running all these miles? There's no purpose in it. I couldn't figure it out. I was just like, there's so many more important things. This is the least important to run all these crazy miles. I should be doing so many other things with my time. It should be healthier. It should be all these different things. And I eventually put the numbers together. First, it was 240 miles in the race, and all the news sources were saying 240 plus hostages had been taken on October 7th. So when those two numbers just somehow connected, I go, wow. I'm going to run a mile for every hostage in dedication to them. That was taken on October 7th, and we'll work with Bring Them Home Now Foundation, which was created on October 7th by friends and families of the hostages with the sole purpose of bringing the hostages back and helping rehabilitate the hostages and their families and give them all the aid they need. It's like, that's going to be my purpose here. I'm no longer on the front lines physically, but I can be still serving my body and still serving my time for this bigger purpose and still doing something that I love. And that became my new why to do it. So then the last year has now been, or I guess maybe it was like 6-7 months, has now been training for this moment of the race. So I've been envisioning this finish line for almost 2 years now.
Wow.
Fast forward about a week or two before the race, Israel had actually gone into Lebanon. There was that whole thing, and my unit's specialty is in Lebanon. So my mentality was like, are they about to call my unit right now? And I'm about to have to pull out of the race again for a second time. Luckily, that didn't happen. And I personally didn't feel like I was as well trained for this particular race as I was last year for the race. Just, I had been busy traveling all over, speaking. It was just a tough year, being in war, the whole thing. So going into the race, I mean, the night before, the day before, the whole couple weeks, I mean, there's a lot of logistics that goes into planning for these races, getting your crew, getting your pacers, timing of a race. It's not like you can just Google how to pace yourself for a marathon for a,
you can't
3 hour, 20-minute finish. And there's like a million different YouTube videos and a million different lists and tables and training mechanisms and all that. Like that doesn't exist for this distance. So especially because the terrain is so different. Some of it's more technical, more climbing, less climbing. So you really have to plan it out yourself. So I was scared. I mean, I was going into a realm I'd never done. I didn't have a coach for this one. I'd had it last year, but I just didn't do it this year. So I'd reused a bunch of it. So I was kind of scared going into it. Did I train well enough? Am I ready for it? Is my knee injury going to flare up, which comes and goes? You don't really have full control over it. Sometimes it happens. Obviously it did. There was a lot of fear. I mean, I was going into it 2 days before. I knew I was going to finish, but while it was this like dual mentality of, I knew I was going to finish. There's no way I was going to quit. The only thing would be some big, crazy, accidental injury that would have happened. So I knew I was like not going to let anything stop me. But at the same exact time, there was this deep fear of like, oh my God, did I train enough? Am I ready? Is this going to happen? I didn't, I'm procrastinating the logistics. I missed those trainings. I didn't do enough trail running. I didn't, do enough strength training. There's all the things you didn't do start coming up. And that's why preparation is so important. Because if you nail the preparation, I can't remember who said this, but, being nervous before any type of big, it was actually Alex Hermosi and Chris Williams. They had said, if you're not prepared enough and you're starting to feel really nervous, there's a difference between excitement and nervous going into a big event, speech, meeting, no matter what it is. If you're nervous rather than excited, it probably means you didn't prepare enough. And that's exactly how I felt. It was like, there were things that I could have done better. And my time showed for it too. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten injured if I did more strength training or more mobility, all sorts of things that could have come up. But then, the morning of the race, still feeling nervous, but like kind of getting ready, you're getting into this mindset of, I've done races before. It's kind of like when you go into a test or, a midterm or any other race or big competition you've done, you start kind of getting into that pattern and rhythm. I've done enough races. And then the gun goes off. And then it's just, that switch just turns and it's just go time. And then you get into this rhythm of, okay, I know what to do. And it's very similar in war. Like when I went into war for the first time, I'd been even in my first couple of real missions. This is way back in the day. But we trained for these things a million times. We've trained for war a million times. But waking up that first morning, knowing we're about to go into Gaza and this is real now, you all of a sudden check your gear 2 more times. Checked it, you've used it a million times, now you know it's real and it's about to work, it's about to go in and you need it, you're going to check it 1 or 2 more times to be extra sure. You're, going to send those extra text messages. You're going to look at your friends and family and your teammates with that, like, there was that look in our eyes. But then the second we went into Gaza, the second we went, we started doing things, boom, training came in. And you act exactly the way you did in training. You get into this rhythm. We know how we need to act. We know how we need to do. We know what our lineup has to be. All of that just starts clicking in. So when the race started, boom, you get into it. You start running. You pace yourself. It's a much longer race than I was used to. So rather than running off the line, I just kind of slow jogged, walked part of it. I mean, it's a 250-mile race, and that was still daunting to me. And, your first mile in, if you start thinking, I have 250 miles to go, especially when my knee started hurting at mile 50, I have 200 miles to go, that breaks you. For a 100-miler too, for anything, it really breaks you. So you have to compartmentalize it or segment the race. And you can't think, I have 250 miles that I'm about to run. To think, okay, where's the next aid station? This is my pace. This is what I need to do to get the next aid station. I need to keep in mind I have a much further way to go. So I can't just sprint to the next aid station. But that's my focus. Get to the aid.
How far apart were the aid stations?
At the shortest, I think it was 8 or 10 miles apart. And at the longest was, I think, 21 miles apart. And
Wow.
that means you have, in between the two, there's no water, electrolytes, food, anything. So really each aid station is where I would get there, refuel, eat as much as I can. You're burning about 7,000 calories a day. So you need to really, really, really load up. And what you eat doesn't necessarily, your focus should just be whatever your body is going to take in, right?
Yeah.
Get sugar, doesn't matter. As long as your body's going to bring it in, your body will burn that sugar in 2 seconds. That's where it kind of goes into, your body just turns into an oven. Anything you give it, it's going to turn into energy right away. But you also need the proteins. You need all this stuff. If you're running a marathon, you're not going to have a cheeseburger. You're not going to have protein. It's
going to be as simple as possible. These gels.
But if you're running for 4.5 days straight, your body's going to break down if it's not getting any protein.
Yeah.
So you really need to have all this kind of stuff in your head. So each aid station was, okay, I got here. I'm 10 miles in. I'm 15 or 20 miles further in. Let me eat. Where's the next aid station? How long is that? How far is that? How long is it going to take me? Okay, what have I eaten already? What time is it? How's my body feeling? You really need to connect and just feel your body. You need to mentally track it as well. And the big thing is eat. The more you people always say ultramarathons, especially 100-milers, are eating competitions in disguise running. Because you just need the calories. Doesn't matter in what form you're going to get it in. If you can put it in your body and your body will take it, do it.
And did you take any essential amino acids, exogenous ketones, gels?
I took gels. I took Morton gel, which is really just a bunch of sugar. I took all sorts of different bars, stuff like that. But I'm big on, and that's part of training, is you really need to understand what your body likes. Everyone has different things. Some people won't use anything from the races because their body likes certain things. So they're going to bring their gels that they use, and they're going to bring the foods and snacks that they use. My body, fortunately, is pretty adaptive. And I actually, after a certain short period of time, can't take all the gels and sugars too much anymore. And my body craves A, salt, but B, real food. So I was having burgers, pancakes, breakfast burritos. And then you just finish that and you start running again. Running, slow walking, running, you let your body build into it. But the big thing is, if you're running a long race and you're thinking about the 100 miles or the 200 miles, you'll mentally break. It works with a lot of things in life that people can probably relate to. If you have a huge work project or a huge development, if you're in real estate, or a huge app that you have to, dish out if you're in tech, whatever it is, and you're thinking about this massive, massive, massive project and you're trying to tackle it today, you're going to overwhelm yourself. But if you can break it down into small sections that are all bite-sized, doable, daily or even hourly sections, and you're like, okay, I just do this, and then I just do that, and then I do that, and then I do that. And when you add it all up, you've completed this incredible project. And it's the same thing with the race. Obviously, you have to train for it. You have to be prepared. You have to do all that. But it's the same thing. And that's the emotional part of it, is not being overwhelmed with the big picture. Second, you let yourself be overwhelmed with the big picture, you're out of it.
Yeah. Now
it's really, really hard. The 15 miles all of a sudden sounds much harder than it was 150 miles ago. But at the same time, you've done 15 miles in your training a million times. So all you do is another 15 miles. And then it becomes just really painful. And that's where that that other part of the race comes in. And for me, it was, at one point it became, no matter how painful this is, there were two aspects. One was the hostages are going through worse. No matter how painful it is, and just to keep it balanced to everything, for sure people living in Gaza and Palestinians are going through way worse right now. But for me, my why was the hostages. But the hostages are going through worse. So no matter how much pain I'm in, if they can do all that without an end in sight, my end was the next 15 miles or the next 200 miles. I had an end where I knew the suffering was going to end. They don't. And that mindset for me was like, wow, I know my end. It's 4 days from now. It's 2 days from now. It's a day from now. It's 20 miles from now. They have no idea. That gave me so much strength. And two was just the gratitude that I could be here. I could be free, right? The hostages don't have that freedom. The people in Gaza don't have that freedom. I have the freedom to do this, to quit when I want, to not quit when I want, to be out in nature, to go out for all these hikes. I should be grateful. So I was starting to have these gratitude practices during it, like, wow, I can do this. This is amazing. And these were a lot of like heavy emotional things that were going through my head, where I remember I was about half a mile from the finish line, and either Adam or one of my other friends or the medic that was with me, they had said, like, Eli, you did it. Like, you did it for the hostages. And I just started breaking down in tears. And crossing the finish line was huge. I mean, it was a 2-year dream in the making.
Dude, I didn't want to interrupt your flow when you said this, but when you mentioned how, these 240 miles that you already spent a year or two preparing for happened to line up with a number of hostages, and you kind of just took those two things together, and it created it crystallized this why. Dude, my body was overwhelmed by goosebumps.
Yeah, I just went on a rant here for like probably 15 minutes without realizing.
Yeah, no, but I really appreciate you tapping into this, and I could see, that it is so recent, and it's such a daunting endeavor that you set out for yourself. I mean, I can feel the emotions are still very, within reach.
For sure.
They're still, part of your everyday.
For sure.
And I really appreciate you bringing this onto the show, because it really just, it shows people the gravity, the weight of the things that we're discussing that are all, theoretical, maybe based in science, but to really push the edge of what we consider human performance, just the realm of possibility that we know. I mean, it takes this depth of emotion and this depth of purpose to see something like that through. So I really appreciate you being able to tap into that and sharing what that felt like and what it looked like.
Totally.
So thank you.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for all this. But yeah, I mean, for so many people, I would just also say, like, and this goes on a slightly different route, but like, man, it's very cheesy and corny, but like, find your why, find your purpose. It could be in anything. But like, once you have that, and you can like make it up, like there's me running the 251 miles didn't free the hostages. I'm not like I'm not like in some illusion that the whole year of training that, I was going to finish this and the hostages would be freed. It's like, obviously not. But it can give you this higher purpose. So no matter what you're doing in your life, you could be in finance, you could be in whatever, find that higher purpose, find some sort of connection, whether it's for your family, whether it's for whatever. If you're training for a marathon to, just be healthier, right? Who gives a shit about the marathon? Just to be healthier and to push yourself mentally, that's enough of a why. It could be to show your kid what is possible. That's a huge why for someone, right? For a dad to show their kid who's going to be on the sidelines and also see their dad training every day. Like, kids' brains learn by visually seeing, not necessarily by being told all the time, by experiences. So like, everyone's got to have some other why that's going to push them, and it doesn't matter. The why doesn't have to be that you love running. The why doesn't have to be to complete a marathon. The why could be to show your kid. And you're showing your kid that you're more disciplined. You're showing your kid that health is important. You're showing your kid that mindset is so important by doing a marathon. So everyone's got their own why. And once you find that, I mean, nothing's going to stop you.
It's incredible, man.
Yeah.
To say the least. This is, there's no words really. I mean, to say it's inspiring is almost belittles just how powerful it is. It's beyond inspiring. I mean, look, I think there's many more topics that we can get into, and perhaps we should do a part 2. Maybe we do it in person. But I want to make sure that people, listen to this in its entirety. So maybe we can start to conclude and shift some gears here.
For sure.
If you could put a word, message, or phrase on a billboard anywhere in the world, what would it say and where would you put it, man?
Well, anywhere in the world. I would put it... This isn't actually what I originally thought going into it, but I think it's so important. I'd put it in Times Square and I would just write breathe. I feel like people there are probably on such an edge. At first I was thinking of like get outside, right? Maybe you like put it on some Wall Street thing that's going to be inside, like wherever the most amount of people on Wall Street can see it, and just like get outside, right? Because I think there's so much. But at the same time, if you're in Times Square, I feel like just the people's nervous systems are probably so high there. I mean, I can't, anytime I go to New York, I can't stand Times Square.
I can't be there for more than a couple of days. And I was born there. I spent a lot of time in New York, but I can't be there for more than a couple of days.
Especially Times Square. Like I get there, I'm like, oh my God, you feel this energy? And I'm like, holy shit, I'm in Times Square. And I'm like, get me out of here. And I think people should need to breathe. Like, people don't breathe enough. It goes back to your whole breath work you were talking about and using nasal breathing. And people, we get caught up with our lives and we forget to breathe. And that's the most important thing. You can run marathons, you can work out every day, but if you don't have control of your breath, it's going to affect the rest of your body. So I think that's what I would end up going with, which I didn't expect to use as my answer.
I'm glad you shared that, because it is like, it is the simplest, the easiest, most accessible way to influence the state of your nervous system. And it's something that if you just, like, I want to amplify this as well. Like, it's not just because we're always breathing, but I think
Totally.
what you're implying is like, notice your breath, because
Totally. Yeah.
it then gives you that agency to change your body in the way that you feel. And it also invites presence, you
Totally.
know? And if you can be present,
I'm happy to amplify it that way, because definitely what I meant.
And I'm honored to, man. I think if you ask me that question, like if next time someone asks me that question, I think I'm going to do something similar, because it is it's something that we do all the time, but it's therefore the easiest thing to overlook, but it's so powerful. And it applies to everything from enjoying a vacation, being in Times Square, to running 251 miles, noticing your breath is going to give you superpowers. And
it's funny, the nasal breathing is something I just remembered. It's something that Adam actually mentioned to me a bunch during the race. I'd be like,
oh, really?
Mouth breathing a bunch. It was so hard for me.
I'm a stickler with him. That's
220, 230 miles into it. I'm miserable. I'm like so in my head. All I'm thinking about is the next step. I'm looking down. I'm making sure I'm not like tripping. I'm dragging my knee and leg around. And then he would just be like, Eli, like, nasal breathe. Yeah. He was just like, poking me with it all the time.
That's awesome.
It was good, because I was like, I'd realize I'd stopped, and then I go back into nasal breathing. It was, I noticed the difference.
Yeah.
I noticed the difference. It was huge.
I'm not going to take credit for this.
You were with me in the runs.
Yeah.
You're a stickler with him, and he was a stickler with me.
I'm a stickler with him. Whenever we're working on anatomy, I just point at my nose. I look at him and I go like this. And he goes, all right. And he gets into it. So I'm not going to take credit for that. That's Adam has transformed, and I give him, actually, who taught me this? Ariel Nurieli, one of my dearest friends, who was an IDF soldier, actually a commander as well. He shared something with me on that episode that changed my life. He said, dude, leaders don't take credit. Leaders don't take credit. That changed my life, man.
So true.
I've had the chance to be, like, in a way, a guide and a mentor.
I'm going to add to that. They don't take credit, but they do take blame.
Oh, wow.
A good leader won't take the credit. He'll put the rewards on his team.
Yeah.
But when something happens and something fucks up, it's their fault.
they hold themselves accountable on behalf of the rest of the team, because they're the ones leading the team, and they need to hold themselves accountable to lead by example, and because, well, they're their leaders. They're the leaders.
Credit to my officer. He does that beautifully.
So leaders don't take credit, but they do take the blame.
Exactly.
Wow, dude, you have officially changed my life. I mean, you already did with what we covered at the beginning of the show up until this point, but now, I mean, this is really the cherry on top, man. I can't thank you enough.
Of course, man. My pleasure.
This has been incredible.
I was honored you asked me to join.
Yeah, no, dude, it's my pleasure, and I'd love to have you back on.
Definitely. When I'm in Miami, we'll do it in person.
Great. Hopefully you'll be able to walk properly by the time that you're back. Keep doing your contrast therapy. The tart cherry juice is just so well established in the exercise physiology world for diminishing, that excess inflammation, delayed onset muscle soreness. Good. Try the red light therapy. I mean,
I've been doing sleep, that too.
Do it all.
Yeah, dude, I've been sleeping like 10 hours a night.
Oof.
My Whoop was not happy with me after the race, but it's getting happy. Yeah.
And it's cool you have all the Garmin data as well for the race, right?
Dude. Oh my God. I had so many things run out of battery.
I bet. I was wondering.
My phone ran out of battery. My Whoop ran out of battery, so I didn't have the whole thing. And I was charging it, but my portable chargers, there was something wrong with them. My watch, this was the hardest one. My watch, I thought it was charging. Every aid station I got to, I charged it, and then it died on me. And I guess the portable charger, just something was with the core. I don't know what it was, but it died on me. So I only have like 170 something miles on it.
I mean, how often do these people get to test 251 miles at Moab?
I wanted my Strava score to show 200.
Oh my God, it's all. It's all for the Strava, sure. It's all for the Strava flex.
It's all for the Strava. Not even for Instagram. It's all for Strava.
I love it, man. Man, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us, and for your why and for your mission for the hostages, and on behalf of our community, the listeners, man, everyone. Just thank you so much.
Of course, man. My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you. It's been great.
Lovely. All right. Well, we'll see you hopefully very soon, man. All the best.
Take care. Bye-bye.